end of the road. Letting go, in my mind, is one of the most difficult things that we are called to do in this life as human beings. It's difficult even to know when to let go. As children being potty trained, right? Sometimes we got rewarded for holding on and letting go, and sometimes we got chastised for holding on or letting go. So you see, it's confusing. I'm seeing a therapist for it. It's okay. If I haven't got it down now at 58, I probably won't get it down. But life is a series of situations and events when we are in the process of holding on and letting go. And I've heard it described, which is the best visual for me, is when you're on a trapeze, and I've never been on a trapeze, but letting go of one of the trapeze, you're letting go and you're waiting for the other one to come, and it's that moment when you're in between. That limbo, if you will. And that's when all the growth comes, the change and the fear. But letting go means change. And letting go means facing the unknowns of that change. In my own life, I just went through a divorce very recently. It became finalized last Thursday, the 12th. And, just that journey of, not wanting to do it, but I had to go on. We both had to go on. But the pain that was there, but the transformation and the trust in life. And because it means trusting life. It means giving up control. Any type of separation, any type of letting go. Because the questions are legion, but are you willing to risk what you have now for the sake of something better? Do we deserve better? Is what I have now really that bad, or does the grass just look greener on the other side? Maybe I should water my own grass. Should I just hang in and maybe things will get better? Am I still growing in this relationship, this job, this situation, or am I just settling? Or if I just hang on long enough, perhaps things will begin to change. We've all been there. And these are difficult questions and difficult decisions to make because they're life-changing. And so I don't think I'm going too far out on a limb this morning if I say that all of us at one time or another have overstayed a welcome in a job, in a relationship, in any situation. And then life comes along in her infinite wisdom. And she brings a person or a situation our way that forces us to move on and to grow. So we have the choice to go kicking and screaming, or we can go with the flow, despite the fear of the unknown. And the point I'm just trying to make is that wherever you go, there you are. And if you have not learned a lesson in life, you can move to Bora Bora. Bora Bora is this way. You can move, I don't know where Bora Bora is, but you can move there. And the same lesson will follow you until you get it. Right? Be a person, place, or thing. I've heard one therapist describe life as moving from one set of problems to a better set of problems. I like that. But I prefer to look at them as challenges. But whatever you call them, they will come. And it can be difficult to accept that certain conditions in life are like an old pair of shoes. At some point, they just don't fit anymore. Holding on to a job or a relationship when it's long passed over will not help you get on with your life. But don't be surprised if it takes a while, if it takes a minute to let go. Because when something in your life is not working, you may pretend it's fixed for a while, right? Telling yourself that it's fixed even though you know it isn't. This is called denial. It may even be sincere denial. It may be magical thinking. But finally you realize that your heart just isn't in the job anymore. It just isn't in the relationship anymore. Maybe it's not in the church you go to, the fellowship you go to anymore. And when you're ready to let go, things start to fall into place. What's the old saying? Sometimes when things fall apart, they're really falling into place. But it's hard to see that when you're in the trenches. And the truth of the matter is that if you have behaved yourself into a situation, you're probably going to behave yourself out of it, which means sometimes you have to fake it till you make it. Have there been times that you're being left behind by the very person you wanted to help, or the very person that you wanted to connect with? But then in the end, we come to be reminded, because as Plato says, all learning is remembering. I'm not saying anything here you don't know. You may have forgotten it, but it's all in here. The answers are all in here. The kingdom is in here. It's not out there. But in the end, we come to realize that life is about examination, it's about elimination, and it's about recreation. Letting go is an act of courage because there's always some degree of pain in the release of something or someone that brought you such joy and happiness. You have to be patient and mourn the loss. And when your grieving is over, you will see things differently. Opportunities will come that you never even imagined or dreamed of. I can tell you that. But it's hard to see it when you're going through it. As the old dies, the new is born, and the phoenix it rises out of the ashes. Any Scorpios in here, you know what I'm talking about. If you let go, the old energy will be released. And in the enriched soil, the seeds of tomorrow can be sown. And see, Buddha knew this. The Buddha knew this. The Buddha talked about this 500 years before the birth of Yeshua. He knew that. He says in the Dhammapada that not only all that we are, but all that we will be is a result of our own thinking. He knew that thoughts are things. They vibrate on a different level, but they are energy. Thoughts are things, and they are forms of energy. And by forming attachments to people, places, and things, we cause suffering in our own lives and the lives of others. And I want you to hear this morning, because it's crucial. The human ego believes not only in separation, but also in scarcity. Now, there's some spiritual thinkers who will say the ego is bad anyway. I need to stay still. Right, Phil? I shouldn't be walking. It's okay. I feel like walking around. But and it's not necessary. It's not bad. The ego is unconscious. The ego is unconscious. And when we observe through meditation, through prayer, through contemplation, through near-death experiences, maybe someone dies or you get a cold slap in the face, right? To snap you out of the stupor. But when we observe the ego in ourselves at work, we go beyond it. And that's the beginning of wisdom. The ego wants to own and to identify with form. These forms can be bodies, they can be possessions, they can be anything material. The ego wants to attach to that. So when the ego tells us that we don't have enough yet, what it really means is, I'm not enough yet. It's insatiable. You see, it's not about wanting or desiring something or someone. There's nothing wrong with that. But like the Buddha tells us, it's just that in a world of constant change, in a world where things do change, whether it's death or breakups, or if you become overly attached to anything, it causes suffering. It's not personal. This is just the way the universe works. So if you look deeply enough, you will see that every apparent loss that you experience, you gain something from. If you're open to that. There's no, as I said in the meditation, there's no illusion that is stronger than love. How many of you have lost loved ones, and that love for them is still just as strong as if you could see them right here. The illusion is that they're gone. But you can be the most hardcore humanist or atheist. Einstein says that energy cannot be created or destroyed. It just changes form. So this is not heebie-jeebie. This is just the way it is. Eckhart Tolle gives us a wonderful illustration of this in a story he calls The Lost Ring. So walk with me through this. As a counselor, he tells of working with a woman twice a week whose body was riddled with cancer. Okay? The woman was young. She was in her mid-40s. And she was given only a few months to live by her physicians. He says that only a few words were exchanged on the initial visits, but mostly they just sat in silence. And this silence caused the woman to experience the stillness within herself that she never ever knew existed during her busy life as a school teacher. That's why we want to stop the glorification of busy. Okay? You can't heal being by doing. We are human beings, not human doings. So in the ministry, we call this the ministry of presence. I've been in hospital rooms. I didn't have to say a word. I can hold the person's hand. They know I'm there. That's a ministry as well. That's pastoral care. So one day he arrived to find that she was in a great deal of distress. She was angry. She was really amped up. What happened? He asked. Her diamond ring, of great sentimental value, as well as being quite expensive, had disappeared. And to make matters worse, this woman was sure that it had been stolen by the woman who came to care for her each day. So the woman said she just could not believe how anyone could be so callous. Why would someone do this to me? Victim. It was a heartless thing to do. So the woman asked Eckhart if he thought she should just confront the woman or to call the police immediately. So Eckhart, having good boundaries, says, I told her I could not tell her what to do with her life. I told her I was uncomfortable with that, but he did ask her to find out how important a ring or anything else was to her at this point in her life. Her body is riddled with cancer. She is dying. You don't understand. I don't know why you're not getting it, Eckhart. She replied, this was my grandmother's ring. I used to wear it every day until I became ill and my hands became too swollen. It's more than just a ring to me. Why aren't you getting this? Don't I have a right to be upset? So Eckhart said that the quickness of her response and the anger and defensiveness were clues to him that she had not yet been present enough to distance herself a bit from the event and to observe her feelings. You can do this. You don't want to wait till you're in your deathbed, but the more quiet you are, the more still you are, you can kind of stand outside yourself and look at life differently. This is called human evolution. He said the ego was at work through her anger and defensiveness. He said, I'm going to ask you a few questions. But instead of answering them now, I want to see if you can find the answer within you. And guess what? The answers, however, may not always come in the forms of words. So she says, I'm ready to listen. I'm ready. His first question was, do you realize that you will have to let go of this ring at some point, and perhaps quite soon? The second question was, how much time do you need before you will be ready to let go of it? Will you become less when you let go of it? Has who you are become diminished by the loss of this ring? He notes that there was a few minutes of silence before the last question, but when she started speaking, she had a little smile on her face. She appeared to become more peaceful. She said, the last question made me realize something very important. She says, first I went to my mind. Okay, now we know the longest journey you ever take is from here to here. She said, I went to my mind first with the answer. Yes, of course you would be diminished. This is what her mind told her. And then she said, I asked myself the question again, has who I am become diminished? This time I tried to feel rather than to think. Suddenly she said, I could feel my I amness. I've never felt that before. I can feel this I amness so strongly that who I am wouldn't be diminished at all. And she says, I can still feel it now. I just, it's something very peaceful. Something, I'm just very much alive. And I want you to hear this morning that this I amness is the essence of who each and every one of us really is. It goes beyond our isms and labels. It goes beyond Unitarianism and Universalism and Tea Party and Democrats, Republicans, gays, straight, yada, yada, Universalists, black, white, Native American. It goes past all that. See, we put ourselves in those boxes and then fight like banshees if someone puts us in them. We know I'm a Unitarian. Okay, that's only that much of who you are. When Moses asked Yahweh, I mean, just so much more. That's all I'm trying to convey. And when Moses asks Yahweh, who should I tell is sending me to Pharaoh? Who are you? Yahweh's reply was, in Hebrew, Eya, Asher, Eya. I will be that I will be. I will be who I will be. I will be where I will be. I am who I am. Those are all the Hebrew translations of that one question. That one answer. Or as the poet reminds us, as human beings, what our mission is on planet Earth is to rediscover who we really are. And believe me, it's bigger than Unitarian Universalism. This is me, for that I came, the poet tells us. So the next thing Eckhart says, and I love him for this, because I think of my feelings as well. I resonate with what the poet Keats said. He's reported to have said, oh, for a life of sensations rather than thoughts. I would be very happy in a world like that. But Eckhart answered her by saying that this I amness is the very joy of your being. And you can only feel this when you get out of your head. Being must be felt. It can't be thought. The ego can't know about being because the ego is thought. This is what the ego consists of. And so he tells her the ring was really in your head as a thought that you confused with being the sense of I am. You thought that the I am was part of the ring. How many times do we do that? He went on to say that whatever the ego seeks and gets attached to are substitutes for the beingness that you can't feel. You can value and care for people and things, but whenever you get too attached to them, you will know it's the ego. Because you're never really attached to a thing, but to a thought that says I, me, and mine. Whenever you completely accept the laws, you have gone beyond the ego and who you are. And the I am which is in you emerges. Letting things or someone go is an act of far greater power than defending or hanging on. And sometimes you have to say that through tears. In the last few weeks of her life, he says that her body became weaker, but she became more radiant, as if an inner light had been turned on. She gave away many of her possessions, even some to the woman she thought had robbed her. Eckhart says that when the woman's mother phoned to tell him that she had made her transition, that she had died, she also mentioned that after her death, they found the ring in the medicine cabinet in the bathroom. Now, did the woman return the ring, or had it been there the entire time? We'll never know. Yet one thing we do know, that life will give you whatever experience is most helpful for you in order for you to grow. How do you know that this is the experience you need? Because it's the one you're having at the moment. It's not brain surgery. It's the one you're having at the moment. And don't take the ego too seriously. At times you may even have to smile and laugh at it, because the ego is not really who you are in the first place. It's not even who you are. Life has its own rhythm, and if you let go, you will find it. But it may take time. It doesn't mean that you give up on life. It only means that you see each moment as it is. There was a clock on Facebook the other day someone had drawn, and it had the hands of a clock, and where the numbers were, it had now, 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 now. And to live this way, you cannot be attached to what just happened. You can appreciate it, you can savor it, you can miss it, and you have to grieve over it. But you must let it go where it will. You cannot control life. Control is resistance, and resistance is futile. If you are resisting, just observe yourself and the way you resist. Just don't get caught up in the drama. Then you can see which doors are open and which doors are closed. And whatever you do, don't try to walk through a closed door. Have you ever noticed that no matter how evolved or spiritual a person is or claims to be, they always leave the room by opening the door and walking through it? Okay, rarely will they walk through that wall. If you attempt to walk through closed doors, you will hurt yourself and perhaps others unnecessarily. And even if you don't know why the door is closed, just respect that for the time being, it is. Wanting it to open does not make it open. Remember, the goal is to move from dis-ease to ease, from discomfort to comfort. Perhaps the next time you make a different choice. And so, if you're like me, and you may not be, we don't have to think alike to love alike, but I believe that this world is a school for souls. That may not be very scientific for you, but you work it out. And it's not a valley of tears. And the text in the school, in this schoolhouse, is the human heart. The heart is the key. It is the mind's Bible. It is the mind's experience. If you want to open a door, the most important door that you open this morning is the one in your heart. Is your heart open or closed? Are you sitting here this morning saying, I don't agree with what he says, and you're caught there? As opposed to saying, well, just let me let it in. Doesn't make you a bad person if you are. I don't really care, but I'm just saying that this is how you can tell. If it's open, then the entire universe abides in you. And if it's closed, you stand alone, bitter and frustrated, holding off the world. If you trust, the river flows through your heart. And if you distrust, it's like a dam. And it holds the river back. And the river is the river of love. A heart in resistance gets tired really quickly because life wears heavily upon it. But a heart that is open is filled with energy, for it dances and it sings. And when the heart is open, all of the world's doors will open for you. And you will go wherever it is that you need to go. Nothing will interfere with your purpose or your destiny. Everything that needs to unfold will unfold naturally, without struggle and without restraint. The unexpected happens, and miracles happen every day. And they don't have to be the grandiose miracle of walking on water or a burning bush. That you're sitting here and your heart is beating is a miracle. That you woke up this morning is a miracle, because a lot of people didn't, let's face it. And one day we won't. Just let go. Just let go of your end of the rope. Letting go is saying, not my will, but thine be done, to the universe. It says, correct my thinking, for I really don't know what's best for me in this situation, much less for anyone else. And we know how to tell everyone else what to do. Some would call this abandonment in the best sense of the word, or surrender. Call it what you will, but just call on it. Just let go. You'll be just fine. So I want to say this. Here's to you. It's a little dry. Here's to your personal strength and to your peace of mind. Here's to your understanding and the elimination of all things that hindered or denied your power, your greatness. Here's to your ability to have the courage to let go of your end of the road. The late spiritual teacher Wayne Dyer used to say that, and this is really quantum physics, it's metaphysics, but if we change the way we look at things, the things we look at change. I feel the words of Julian of Norwich are appropriate here. She says, but all will be well. All will be well, and all manner of things will be well. And finally, the poet Rumi reminds you, but also me, this morning, the time for words is ended. No more words. Just listen to the voice within. May it always be so. Amen, and blessed be.
How about thoughts on people? It's not on.
Yeah, I'm hearing you pretty well.
Okay. Thoughts on people that you encounter that, because of what's going on in our world, hate all Muslims.
Yeah.
That means I'm just affected by a lot of people that because of this, they're devout Christians. Devout, I mean, there's a hatred for us. So, your thoughts?
I will say this. I'm thinking you're asking me how to handle that. This may not work for everybody. It works for me. You know, we remember the Crusades. Well, we remember it was still fire. My long-term memory is just... No, what I have done... someone called me yesterday, a brother from the UU Church in Hendersonville. He is dating someone who is evangelical. The UU Church that he was going to is not Christian enough for him. So anyway, but he's with these Christians who are not, they're intolerant. And so he's frustrated because he's trying to change them. What I have learned is I don't do that. Okay, I say you can either accept them or move on, but you're not going to change them. I hear that, I hear it, I see it, but all I can do is be the change I want to see in the world. I can't be concerned with that. Now that doesn't mean you don't march or you don't, whatever your deal is, but I have to be accountable for me. I'm not going to change that. So what I do is when I encounter others or marginalized groups or whatever, I'm trying to be the best Michael I can be. But that's a losing battle, at least to me. Now, if you are called, because there's some people who are, or think they are, that I'm going to change that, then that's your life's mission. Mine isn't. And so once I'm at peace with that, then it really doesn't matter. That's something they're going to have to work through. Everybody's at different stages of evolution. You have more evolved beings and less evolved beings and beings in between. You're more evolved in some ways and less evolved in others. So the trick is, how do I navigate this journey of life and still keep my I amness? But you're not going to change that. You can send them energy if you want to use the word prayer or whatever. But, you know, that's the best I can tell you. Because that's where they are. And they're not going to change until they're ready to change. And it may not be this lifetime. It may be another one. Yeah. Got to put your big boy and big girl pants on and get out there. It's hard, but it means giving up control, because basically what you're saying is, if you only saw it my way, I'm right. And in some ways we are, but you can get into it. It's just a subtle way of doing what they're doing. I'm a Unitarian Universalist. I'm so much more open than you. Don't you get it? Don't you see it? I got these principles and blah, blah, blah. And I don't want, because we can be very self-congratulatory, but in some ways we have to be careful, because then we go over and basically what we're saying is, I'm right and you're not. And if you only thought like I did, you'd be right. And that's just as messed up, in my mind.
Well, I'd like to address this because I also had a similar experience. This summer I was staying at the home of a high school friend, my best friend from high school, and she made a comment about those Muslims. And we were sitting opposite each other at the table, and I just said to her, well, all Muslims are not bad. And she looked like I had slapped her, but we didn't talk about it anymore. And when I left, I was so afraid that this friendship that had been since I was 17 years old was fractured. But I started thinking about what do we still have in common? And so I wrote her a letter and just said, even though we both know, and she's really out there, I learned she listens to Rush Limbaugh every day, her husband told me. And it's like, oh, do we have anything in common anymore? But then I started thinking, we do have things in common. And so I wrote a note to her listing what we have in common, even though we have a lot of major things not in common. Because it doesn't benefit her or me if we say, well, you don't think like me anymore, so we can't associate. I'm not going to change her. I know that. But I don't want to other her either.
Yeah, I mean, if you can do that, fine, but there are a lot of times when people can't, and that's all I'm saying. I mean, I'm hearing you loud and clear. But again, you can only be responsible for you. She can say, you know what, I look at your list and I don't think we have that much in common. Then what do you do? So that's all I'm saying. So sometimes you have to let go. Sometimes you have to write it off. But it takes two. But I know that you want to be frustrated. The quickest way is to let it really get on you that other people aren't looking at life the way you did. It took me 58 years to get it. I knew it up here. And I had less drama in my life. I bless people, they move on. But like I said, that works for me, and that's what you were asking. But because you want the inner peace. And people are not, you're not going to get 8 billion people, you can't get 3 people to agree.
During the Second World War, everybody hated Hitler and the Nazis, and even kids, played those kind of games and so forth. But what really united our country was the care we had for one another, and I hope that we can reach that place again, because to be united in hate just doesn't work. You have that object or that person or those people or a name of some kind. It just doesn't work. But to be united in love for one another, we would be setting an example perhaps, and so would the Muslim families who don't want this either. And I think that's what we need to remember.
And I will also suggest that those individuals who think so differently from us are our teachers, because they're teaching us to learn to accept. And it doesn't mean I have to like you or be your best friend or hold your hand. But it does mean that you are on the planet, and I can shake the dust off my feet and wish you well and go away. But this is how we grow. We don't grow from people who think exactly like we do all the time. And so to look at it, again, if you look at it from the schoolhouse analogy, what can I learn here? Sometimes it's just obvious. But, because again, at least in my experience, there is that part of us in human beings that I want to be right. I want to be right, no matter what. I may be more subtle in it, but I want to be right. And if the other person wants to be right, which they do, it takes a very evolved person to be able to see through that. Then you can see where the tension is. Because it comes to, I want to be right or do I want to be at peace? That's the question. Do I want to be right here or do I want to be at peace? And you do what Robbie said, I reach out to you, and then it's up to them to reach back. And then that's it. Because otherwise, it's just clashes.
Because there was a time I probably would have thought, well, we're done with this,
Sure.
you know.
And that's growth on your part, acceptance. But it takes two.
One last question?
This is very quick and actually a bit frivolous, but you know how when you lose something that you like the ring, like the diamond ring, or you've broken something like a special bowl that belonged to your ancestors or something? Somebody said something to me one time that I've always remembered, and it's, don't cry over something that can't cry over you. And I always remember that when I lose something. It's just a little frivolous thing to put in your head.
But wise. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.